The air crackled, not with the joy of celebration, but with the static electricity of unspoken words, each one a tiny lightning bolt threatening to shatter the carefully constructed facade of our perfect life. I could taste the champagne, but it turned to ash in my mouth. He chose this moment, surrounded by the triumphant smiles of our daughter and the well-wishing gazes of our family, to drop the bomb. The day my husband announced he was leaving me at our daughter's graduation was the day the icy gears of revenge began to turn. If you love your daughter with all your heart, subscribe now to hear more of my story. 22 years. 22 years I had dedicated to him, to our family, to building a life that I genuinely believed was unshakable. We met in college, young and naive, both brimming with dreams as vast as the open sky. He was a struggling artist then, all messy hair and paint-stained hands, and Ella was the practical one, the aspiring accountant who saw the beauty in balance sheets and the potential for a stable future. I supported him through art school, through countless rejections, through the lean years when we ate ramen more often than restaurant meals. I believed in his talent even when he doubted himself. I sacrificed my own ambitions, putting them on hold so he could chase his. We built a home, filled it with laughter and love, and welcomed our beautiful daughter Lily into the world. I became the rock, the steady force that allowed him to soar. And he soared all right out of our marriage. He'd become successful, of course. His art, once deemed too unconventional, now hung in galleries around the world, fetching prices that made my head spin. The messy hair was expertly styled, the paint-stained hands manicured, and the struggling artist was now a celebrated icon, dripping in wealth and arrogance. He was a completely different person than the man I fell in love with, but I told myself it was okay. I told myself that success had simply changed him, not fundamentally altered him. I told myself that the love we shared was strong enough to weather any storm. I was so very, very wrong. I saw him talking to her at the graduation party. Some chic gallery owner with eyes only for him and the lifestyle he now exuded. That should have been my first clue of the pain to come. He waited until the last guest had left, until Lily was upstairs basking in the glow of her achievement, before he dropped the bombshell. Ella, he said, his voice devoid of any emotion, any hint of the love we once shared, I'm leaving you. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The carefully orchestrated life I'd built crumbled around me, leaving me buried beneath the debris of broken promises and shattered dreams. He offered no explanation, no apology, just a cold, clinical statement of fact. He was leaving, for her, for a life that glittered brighter than the one we had built together. My vision blurred, the champagne flute in my hand shattered, and I realized with a sickening certainty that the man I thought I knew was a complete stranger. The person I trusted most. One of them? The silence that followed his announcement was deafening, broken only by the frantic hammering of my heart against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to rage, to unleash the fury that was building inside me, but I couldn't. Lily, I had to protect Lily. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a semblance of composure, and asked the question that burned in my mind. Why? He simply shrugged, as if my pain, our life, meant nothing. I'm not happy, Ella. I haven't been happy for a long time. That was it, 22 years reduced to a single, dismissive sentence. He said he'd already spoken to a lawyer, that the paperwork was being drawn up. He would be generous, of course, ensuring Lily's future was secure, as if money could ever replace a father's love, a family's bond. He packed his bags that night, his movements clinical and detached, as if he were simply checking out of a hotel room. I watched him go, my heart shattering into a million pieces, each one a tiny shard of what we used to be. The days that followed were a blur of disbelief, anger, and grief. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could barely function. The betrayal cut so deep, twisting in my gut like a poisoned knife. How could he do this? How could he throw away everything we had built, everything we had shared, for a fleeting infatuation with some art groupie? I tried to talk to him, to reason with him, to salvage what was left of our marriage, but he was resolute. He was done. He'd made his decision. The man I knew was gone, replaced by a cold, unfeeling stranger. I found myself replaying our entire relationship in my head, searching for clues, for warning signs that I had missed. Were there hints of his dissatisfaction that I had ignored? Had I been so focused on being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, that I had failed to see the growing distance between us? The questions haunted me, circling endlessly in my mind, offering no answers, no solace. The house felt empty without him, each room a stark reminder of his absence. Lily tried her best to be supportive, but I could see the pain in her eyes, the confusion and disappointment that mirrored my own. How could I explain to her that the father she adored was leaving us for another woman? How could I shield her from the harsh reality of his selfishness? I put on a brave face for her, forcing smiles and cheerful words, but inside I was crumbling. Sleep offered no escape. Night after night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, dissecting every word, every gesture, searching for a way to fix things, to rewind time. But there was no going back. The damage was done. He had made his choice. The legal proceedings were swift and brutal. His lawyer, a shark in a tailored suit, made it clear that he was prepared to fight for everything. He wanted to keep the house, the art collection, everything we had built together. He painted me as a bitter, controlling woman, a hindrance to his artistic genius. Lies, all lies, but the truth seemed to matter little. His money and his reputation gave him power, and he wielded it mercilessly. I felt helpless, vulnerable, like a pawn in a game I didn't understand. He was systematically dismantling my life, stripping me of everything I held dear. Then came the ultimate slap in the face. He filed for sole custody of Lily. Accusations flew that I was mentally unstable, an unfit mother, incapable of providing a stable home for our daughter. I was livid. How dare he? After years of neglect, after barely being present in Lily's life, he suddenly wanted to be her sole parent. It was a cruel, calculated move designed to break me, to punish me for some perceived transgression. This wasn't just about a divorce anymore, it was about total annihilation. He wanted to erase me from his life, from Lily's life, as if I had never existed. That's when something inside me shifted. The grief and despair began to harden into something else, something cold and sharp. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about injustice. It was about protecting my daughter, about fighting for what was rightfully mine. It was about revenge. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. The courtroom was a sterile, suffocating space, the air thick with legal jargon and unspoken animosity. I sat there numb as his lawyer painted a picture of me as a woman consumed by bitterness, a woman incapable of putting Lily's needs above my own. He twisted my words, distorted my actions, presenting them as evidence of my instability. My own lawyer fought valiantly, but it was an uphill battle. His money and influence permeated everything, coloring the judge's perception, swaying the opinions of those who were meant to be impartial. The accusations stung, each one a fresh wound on my already battered soul, but the most devastating blow came when Lily was called to the stand. I watched, my heart in my throat, as she testified, her voice trembling slightly. She spoke of her father's success, his generosity, his unwavering love for her. She spoke of my anger, my sadness, my inability to cope with the divorce. Every word was a dagger, twisting deeper and deeper into my heart. He had manipulated her, poisoned her mind against me. My own daughter, the person I loved more than anything in the world, was being used as a weapon against me. I wanted to reach out to her, to tell her the truth, to protect her from his lies, but I was trapped, silenced by the proceedings, forced to watch as my world crumbled around me. The judge ruled in his favor. Sole custody. He got everything he wanted. I was granted visitation rights, supervised visits, limited to a few hours a week. It was a slap in the face, a complete and utter defeat. I left the courtroom feeling hollow, empty, as if my soul had been ripped from my body. I stumbled out into the harsh sunlight, the city noises blurring around me, the faces of strangers swimming in a haze. I was alone, stripped of my husband, my daughter, my home, my dignity. He had taken everything. I walked aimlessly, my feet carrying me without direction, my mind numb with despair. I ended up at the park, the same park where Lily and I used to spend countless afternoons, laughing, playing, building memories that now seemed like a distant dream. I sat on a swing, the rusty chains creaking with each movement, a mournful soundtrack to my misery. The other children, their faces bright with joy, seemed to mock my pain, their laughter a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face, and allowed myself to succumb to the darkness. I had reached my breaking point. He had won. That night I sat alone in my empty apartment, the silence amplifying my despair. I looked around at the bare walls, the sparsely furnished rooms, and saw nothing but failure. I had dedicated my life to building a home, a family, and it had all been for nothing. He had taken it all away, leaving me with nothing but shattered dreams and a broken heart. The thought of going on, of facing another day without Lily, without hope, was unbearable. I considered just giving up, letting the darkness consume me, ending the pain, but then a flicker of defiance ignited within me, a spark of resolve that refused to be extinguished. I thought of Lily, of her bright spirit, her unwavering love. I couldn't give up on her, I couldn't let him win. I had to fight back, not for myself, but for her, for the future that he was trying to steal from us. The tears dried on my face, replaced by a cold, hard determination. The grief and despair receded, replaced by a burning rage. He had underestimated me. He thought he had broken me, but he had only made me stronger. He had awakened something within me that had been dormant for years. A cunning, a ruthlessness, a desire for revenge that I never knew existed. I would not let him get away with this. I would fight him with every fiber of my being. I would expose his lies, his deceit, his cruelty. I would show him what it meant to underestimate a woman scorned. The day he thought he'd crushed me was the day I started planning. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that held no warmth, no humor, only a chilling promise of retribution. The game had just begun. The first step was information. I needed to know everything about his life, his routines, his weaknesses. I started subtly, observing him during my supervised visits with Lily. I paid attention to his phone calls, his conversations, his interactions with her. I acted broken, defeated, allowing him to believe that he had completely crushed my spirit. He ate it up, basking in his victory, never suspecting that I was meticulously gathering information piece by piece. I upgraded my phone, ensuring the camera quality was top-notch. Every visit, every interaction was recorded. He was careless, arrogant, often discussing his business dealings, his art acquisitions, even his personal life within earshot. He never imagined that his words could be used against him. I also started documenting everything, every expense, every interaction, every lie he had told in court. I knew that if I wanted to win this battle, I needed to be prepared. I consulted with a private investigator, a discreet, resourceful woman who specialized in family law cases. She helped me uncover financial irregularities, hidden assets, and a pattern of reckless behavior that he had carefully concealed. The deeper I dug, the more I discovered the extent of his deceit. He wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a fraud, a liar, a manipulator. I started attending his gallery openings, blending into the crowd, observing his interactions with the wealthy patrons, the art critics, the socialites who fawned over him. I made connections, cultivating relationships with people in his circle, subtly probing for information. I presented myself as a grieving ex-wife, seeking closure, seeking understanding. People were surprisingly willing to talk, eager to share gossip, to reveal secrets. I learned about his business dealings, his art acquisitions, his financial arrangements. I discovered that he had been using offshore accounts to hide his wealth, evading taxes, and concealing assets from the divorce settlement. It was a risky game, but the potential reward was worth it. I knew that if I could expose his financial crimes, I could not only reclaim what was rightfully mine, but also destroy his reputation, his career, everything he held dear. He had built his empire on lies, and I was determined to tear it down brick by brick. The private investigator helped me set up hidden cameras in my apartment, ostensibly for security, but in reality to document my interactions with Lily during our visits. I wanted to create a record of his attempts to alienate her from me to prove that he was manipulating her. The cameras were small, discreet, almost invisible, hidden in plain sight. He never noticed them, too consumed by his own ego, too confident in his own invincibility. One afternoon, during a visit, I overheard him on the phone discussing a shady deal with an art dealer in Switzerland. He was talking about smuggling a valuable painting out of the country, evading customs and taxes. I recorded the conversation, capturing every word, every detail. It was the evidence I needed, the smoking gun that would expose his criminal activity. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had him. I knew that if I went to the authorities with this information, they would have no choice but to investigate. He would face serious charges, fines, even jail time. His carefully constructed world would come crashing down around him, but I couldn't act rashly. I needed to be strategic, methodical. I consulted with a forensic accountant, a meticulous, detail-oriented woman who specialized in uncovering financial fraud. She helped me analyze his financial records, tracing the flow of money, identifying the hidden accounts, the shell corporations, the complex web of deceit he had created. She showed me how to present the evidence in a way that would be irrefutable, undeniable. I learned about forensic accounting techniques, about tracing money laundering schemes, about identifying fraudulent transactions. I became a student of his crimes, mastering the details of his deceit. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I knew that the moment I exposed him, everything would change. My life would be turned upside down again, but I was ready. I had prepared for this moment for months, meticulously planning every detail, anticipating every possible outcome. I had built a fortress around myself, protecting myself from his attacks, shielding myself from his lies. I was no longer the naive, trusting woman he had married. I was a warrior, a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. I made sure to always dress modestly, act depressed, and generally sell the image of a broken woman whenever he was around. I even started accidentally bumping into his new girlfriend at social events, always making sure to appear pathetic and defeated. This lulled them into a false sense of security. They thought they had won. I had to be careful. I knew he was watching me, trying to anticipate my next move. He had spies in my circle, people who were reporting back to him. I couldn't trust anyone. I kept my plans secret, sharing them with no one, not even Lily. I knew that if she knew what I was planning, she would try to stop me, to protect me from the fallout. But I couldn't be protected. I had to do this for her, for myself, for all the women who had been betrayed, abused, and silenced. The day was approaching. The day I would unleash my revenge. The day he would learn what it meant to underestimate a woman scorned. The key to his downfall, I realized, wasn't just the financial wrongdoings or the art smuggling, it was her. His new girlfriend, the one he'd left me for. She was younger, ambitious, and utterly besotted with him. And crucially, she was incredibly indiscreet. She bragged about their lavish lifestyle, about the expensive gifts he showered upon her, about the exotic trips they took. She posted everything on social media, oblivious to the fact that she was providing me with a treasure trove of evidence. Photos of the smuggled artwork hanging in their apartment, receipts for extravagant purchases made with offshore accounts, even screenshots of text messages where he discussed his illegal activities. It was all there, laid out for me like a decadent feast. She was his weakness, his blind spot, the chink in his armor that I could exploit. I started interacting with her on social media, showering her with compliments, feigning admiration for her perfect life. I played the part of the pathetic ex-wife, congratulating her on her happiness, subtly probing for information. She lapped it up, eager to flaunt her victory, to prove that she was the one who had finally tamed him. She even started confiding in me, complaining about his controlling behavior, his demanding nature, his constant need for validation. She didn't realize that every word she uttered was being meticulously recorded, cataloged, and analyzed. The more she revealed, the clearer it became. She was my unwitting accomplice in his destruction. I decided to throw a small dinner party, inviting a few mutual acquaintances, including his girlfriend. I made sure to create a relaxed, intimate atmosphere, plying everyone with wine and encouraging them to share stories. I steered the conversation towards art, subtly guiding it towards the topic of his collection, his acquisitions, his latest projects. He was in his element, holding court, regaling everyone with tales of his artistic genius. His girlfriend predictably chimed in, eager to impress, bragging about the rare and valuable pieces he had acquired. That's when I dropped the bomb. Casually, as if it were an afterthought, I mentioned that I had recently been contacted by an art appraiser who had expressed concerns about the authenticity of one of his most prized possessions, a painting he claimed to have acquired from a private collector in Switzerland. I said that the appraiser suspected it might be a fake, a forgery created to inflate its value for insurance purposes. The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. I watched his face, savoring the flicker of panic that crossed his features. He tried to brush it off, dismissing it as a ridiculous rumor, a malicious attempt to undermine his reputation. But I could see that I had rattled him. He knew that I was onto him, and he knew that I wasn't going to let it go. The next day, I received a frantic phone call from his girlfriend. She was hysterical, accusing me of trying to ruin their lives. She said that he was furious, that he suspected I was behind the art appraiser's investigation. She begged me to stop, to leave them alone, to let them be happy. I feigned innocence, expressing surprise at her accusations. I told her that I had no idea what she was talking about, that I was just trying to move on with my life. I even offered to help her, to mediate between her and him, to smooth things over. She was desperate, vulnerable, and easily manipulated. I suggested that we meet for lunch to discuss the situation in person. She readily agreed. I chose a quiet, secluded restaurant, one with private booths and discreet service. I wanted to create an atmosphere of trust, of confidentiality. I arrived early, ensuring that our booth was bugged with a miniature recording device hidden beneath the table. I wanted to capture every word of our conversation, to have irrefutable proof of her involvement in his wrongdoings. When she arrived, she was a nervous wreck, her eyes red and swollen, her hands trembling. She launched into a tirade, accusing me of being a vengeful witch, a bitter shrew, a woman obsessed with destroying their happiness. I listened patiently, allowing her to vent, offering sympathetic nods and soothing words. When she finally calmed down, I gently steered the conversation towards his financial affairs, his art dealings, his offshore accounts. I asked her about the painting, about the private collector in Switzerland, about the smuggling operation. She hesitated, reluctant to betray him, but I could see that she was torn. She knew that he had been lying to her, that he had been using her, that he had put her in a dangerous position. I played on her fears, her insecurities, her doubts. I told her that he was a dangerous man, that he was capable of anything, that he would stop at nothing to protect himself. I said that she was being used as a pawn in his game, that he would throw her under the bus the moment she became a liability. I reminded her of the text messages, the photos, the social media posts that incriminated her. I pointed out that she could face serious charges, fines, even jail time if she was caught. I offered her a way out, a chance to clear her name, to protect herself from his wrath. I told her that if she cooperated with me, if she provided me with the evidence I needed, I would make sure that she was protected, that she wouldn't be held accountable for his crimes. She was trapped, cornered, with no other options. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, confessing everything. She revealed the details of his smuggling operation, the location of his offshore accounts, the names of his accomplices. She even handed me a USB drive containing copies of his financial records, his secret correspondence, his incriminating photographs. It was everything I needed. I thanked her, assuring her that she had made the right decision. I promised her that I would protect her, that I would make sure that he paid for his crimes. I left the restaurant feeling a surge of triumph, of vindication. I had her, and through her, I had him. I had all the evidence I needed to destroy him, to expose his lies, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one more card to play, one more trap to set. I knew that he was suspicious, that he was watching me, that he was trying to anticipate my next move. I needed to lull him into a false sense of security, to make him believe that I was still a broken, defeated woman, incapable of fighting back. I decided to stage a public breakdown, a dramatic display of despair that would convince him that he had won. I went to his gallery opening, dressed in my most unflattering clothes, my face pale and drawn, my eyes red and swollen. I stumbled through the crowd, muttering incoherently, bumping into people, spilling drinks. I made a scene, drawing attention to myself, attracting the pitying glances of the wealthy patrons, the amused smirks of the art critics. I approached him, tears streaming down my face, begging him to take me back, to forgive me, to give me another chance. I groveled at his feet, humiliating myself, sacrificing my dignity for the sake of my revenge. He was smug, condescending, enjoying my humiliation. He told me that it was over, that he had moved on, that I was nothing but a pathetic reminder of his past. He turned his back on me, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. That's when I knew I had him. He was convinced that he had broken me, that I was no longer a threat. He had let his guard down, and that's exactly what I needed. The stage was set, the trap was sprung, he just didn't know it yet. The following day, he received an anonymous tip that I was planning to end my life. The anonymous tip triggered a swift response. Police arrived at my apartment, sirens blaring, lights flashing, creating a chaotic scene that played out perfectly according to my plan. They found me seemingly unconscious, surrounded by empty bottles of pills, a suicide note clutched in my hand. It was all staged, of course, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to manipulate him into a false sense of security. He rushed to the hospital, frantic with worry, believing that he had finally broken me, that I was about to end it all. He stood outside my room, packing nervously, his face etched with guilt and anxiety. He didn't know that I was watching him, observing his every move through a hidden camera I had installed in the room. I could see the relief wash over him when the doctor told him that I would recover, that I would be fine. He believed that he had dodged a bullet, that I was no longer a threat. He was wrong. The day he thought I would disappear from this world, I was ready to detonate the bomb. That very evening, I contacted the authorities, providing them with all the evidence I had collected. The recordings of his phone conversations, the financial records from the USB drive, the photos and text messages from his girlfriend's social media, the testimony I had extracted from her during our lunch. I laid it all out for them, presenting a clear and irrefutable case of fraud, tax evasion, and art smuggling. They acted swiftly, raiding his gallery, his home, his office, seizing his assets, arresting him and his accomplices. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a media frenzy that engulfed him and everyone associated with him. His reputation was shattered, his career ruined, his empire destroyed. The wealthy patrons, the art critics, the socialites who had once fawned over him now shunned him, distancing themselves from the scandal. His girlfriend, terrified of being implicated in his crimes, turned against him, cooperating with the authorities in exchange for immunity. She revealed even more details about his illegal activities, providing them with additional evidence that sealed his fate. He was alone, abandoned, with no one to turn to. I watched it all unfold from a distance, savoring the sweet taste of victory. I saw the photos of him being led away in handcuffs, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. I read the articles detailing his crimes, exposing his lies, revealing the truth about his wealth and his success. I heard the whispers, the rumors, the condemnations that followed him everywhere he went. His world had crumbled, collapsing under the weight of his own deceit. The look on his face when he realized that I was the one who had orchestrated his downfall was priceless. The shock, the disbelief, the pure, unadulterated rage. He had underestimated me, believing that I was too weak, too broken, too naive to fight back. He had learned the hard way that a woman scorned is a force to be reckoned with. He lost everything: his freedom, his reputation, his wealth, his friends, his family. Even his daughter, Lily, finally understood the truth about him, severing all ties with him, disgusted by his actions. He was left with nothing but the consequences of his choices. As for me, I reclaimed what was rightfully mine, securing my financial future, protecting my daughter from his influence. I rebuilt my life stronger and more resilient than before. I found peace knowing that I had stood up for myself, that I had fought back against injustice, that I had emerged victorious. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.